You are the only one here. There is no audience to impress, no rival to outpace, and no ledger to balance. This is the rediscovery of the law of silent abundance, the ancient understanding that prosperity is not a destination you reach through effort, but a frequency you inhabit through stillness. Lay down the heavy garments of your striving. The world you have navigated until this moment, the world of grasping, of measuring, and of loud declarations, is a fever dream from which you are now invited to wake. You have come to this threshold because the noise of becoming has finally exhausted the spirit of being. Consider the empty vessel in the rain. While the world runs frantically with nets and hooks, trying to catch the clouds, the vessel simply sits. It does not plead for the storm. It does not negotiate with the sky. It does not boast of its capacity or lament its hollowness. It simply remains open, positioned in the quiet center of its own existence. And because it is empty, and because it is still, it becomes the only thing in the landscape that the rain can truly inhabit. By doing nothing, it becomes full. You have spent your life trying to build the rain. You were taught that abundance is a structure to be manufactured, a mountain to be scaled, or a secret to be shouted. But the great mystery whispers a different truth. The loudest soul is the leakiest vessel. To enter this teaching, you must accept a holy paradox. The more you broadcast your desire, the more you announce its absence to the universe. To speak of your magic is to bleed its power. To show the world your seeds before they have sprouted is to invite the frost. In these sessions, we shall practice the art of the interior. We will learn to cultivate a wealth so private that the world cannot even guess at its coordinates. We will move from the hustle of the marketplace to the hum of the sanctuary. Take a breath not to prepare for a task, but to acknowledge that the air is already provided, without your intervention, without your merit, and without your cost. The gate is closing behind you. The silence begins now. Chapter 1. The Law of the Hidden Seed. The world is a cacophony of premature exposure. It is a marketplace where the fruit is demanded before the blossom has even dreamed of opening, and where the sapling is pulled by its leaves to make it grow faster. You have been trained to believe that if a thing is not seen, it is not happening. You have been led to fear the dark, the quiet, and the interval. But the law of silent abundance begins in the fertile gloom, far beneath the treading feet of the ambitious. To understand abundance, you must first understand the sanctity of the buried. Consider the nature of the subterranean. Every monumental oak, every sprawling vine, and every golden field of grain began its journey in a state of total, unblemished isolation. A seed that is constantly dug up to check its progress will never take root. A seed that is exposed to the harsh glare of the sun before it has developed its internal strength will simply wither. The darkness is not a prison, it is a womb. It is the only place where the radical transformation from potential to reality can occur without interference. In your life, your intentions are these seeds. When you speak of your dreams to those who have not the ears to hear them, you are digging up your own progress. When you post your progress to seek the validation of strangers, you are thinning the soil of your soul. You are bleeding out the very pressure required for the diamond to form. The parable of the underground gardener. In a kingdom obsessed with the height of its towers and the roar of its parade grounds, there lived an old man known only as the master of the deep, while the other citizens spent their days polishing the marble of their facades and shouting their lineage from the rooftops. The master dwelt in a small, windowless cottage at the edge of the cliffs. He was whispered to be the wealthiest man in the realm, yet no one saw him trade in the markets. No gold hung from his neck, no silk draped his frame. Curiosity eventually drove a young, ambitious merchant to break into the master's sanctuary. The merchant expected to find chests of jewels or scrolls or forbidden alchemy. Instead, he found the master sitting in a room of absolute shadows. In the center of the room sat a single, plain earthen pot, filled with black soil. There was no light. There was no water visible. The master simply sat, his hands hovering inches above the dirt, his eyes closed in a trance of profound listening. "Old fool," the merchant scoffed, his voice echoing in the hallowed space. "You sit in the dark, tending to nothing. Outside, the sun is shining on the king's orchards. There is fruit to be plucked and gold to be made. Why do you waste your breath on a pot of cold earth? The master did not open his eyes. He only whispered, "The king's fruit is eaten by the birds and rots by the moon's turn. My garden grows where the wind cannot reach it. Because I do not demand it show itself. It gives me everything." That night, as the merchant slept, he was awakened by a scent so divine it felt like a memory of a paradise he had never visited. It was a fragrance that didn't just drift on the air. It vibrated in the marrow of his bones. He followed the scent back to the master's cottage. Through the cracks in the door, he saw a light that was not made of flame. The master was still sitting in the dark, but from the pot, a bloom had emerged that defied the laws of the world. It was a flower of pure, translucent silver, pulsing with the rhythm of the master's own heartbeat. It gave off no sound, yet it filled the silence with a frequency of such immense peace that the merchant's greed simply evaporated. "How?" the merchant gasped, falling to his knees. "I gave it the one thing the world refuses to give," the master replied. "I gave it the right to be secret. And because it was never seen by a covetous eye, it grew into the shape of the infinite, the axiom of the unspoken. You must become the underground gardener of your own destiny. The frequency of abundance is a delicate thing. It is easily disrupted by the doubt of the observer. When you share a vision with another person, you are not just sharing information. You are inviting their energy, their fears, their limitations, their rational skepticism into the laboratory of your spirit. Most people live in a state of perceived lack. When they look at your seed, they do not see the silver flower. They see a pile of dirt. Their observation acts as a weight, a psychic gravity that pulls your frequency back down to the mundane. Silent abundance requires you to develop a private interior. This is a space within you that is off limits to everyone, your partner, your parents, your peers. It is the holy of holies, where your highest intentions reside. In this space, you do not try to manifest, you simply hold the frequency of that which already is. The world tells you that seeing is believing, but the law of the hidden seed declares that believing is secrecy. When you feel the rush of a new idea or the thrill of a coming prosperity, your instinct will be to tell someone, "This is a leak." It is a discharge of the very tension you need to propel the manifest into the physical. Every time you hold your tongue, you strengthen your internal reservoir. Every time you choose not to explain yourself, you add a layer of protective soil over your growing gold. The silent practice, the alchemical seal. To anchor this principle, we shall perform the ritual of the alchemical seal. Tonight, or in this moment of stillness, identify one seed of abundance you wish to cultivate. It may be a financial threshold, a healing of the body, or a shift in your creative power. Do not give it a name in the language of the marketplace. Do not think of it in terms of dollars or status. Feel its texture. Is it warm? Is it heavy? Does it hum? Visualize this intention as a small, glowing sphere of light located just behind your navel, the center of your gravity. Now, imagine yourself wrapping this light in layers of rich, dark velvet. Each layer represents a vow of silence. The first layer protects it from the judgment of the past. The second layer protects it from the expectation of the future. The third layer protects it from the gaze of the other. As you wrap the seed, feel the pressure increasing. This is not the pressure of stress, but the pressure of potency. You are creating a vacuum where only your frequency and the divine frequency can interact. When the seed is fully covered, say to yourself, not with your voice, but with your intent, "That which is hidden is mine. That which is secret grows. I do not seek, for I am the soil. I do not work, for I am the sun." For the next 7 days, you are to speak of your plans to no one. If someone asks what you are working on, smile and offer them a pleasant generality. Let them think you are doing nothing. Let them believe you are idle. Enjoy the holy mischievousness of knowing that, while the surface of the earth looks still, there is a silver bloom beneath your skin, drinking from a source they can never touch. The world rewards the actor, but the universe rewards the author. And the author writes in the quiet of the night, long before the curtain rises. Rest now in your darkness. The seed knows what to do. It does not need your anxiety to find the light. It only needs your silence to keep its power. Chapter 2. Mirror Alchemy. The world you behold through your physical eyes is not a solid reality, but a vast, shimmering reflection. Most souls spend their incarnations frantically polishing the glass, trying to scrub away the shadows they see on the surface, or shouting at the image to change its shape. They treat the reflection as the source, and in doing so, they become slaves to a ghost. Mere alchemy is the reversal of this great delusion. It is the realization that the glass is neutral. The light, the form, and the abundance originate solely within the one who stands before it. To master silent abundance, you must cease the exhausting labor of fixing your external circumstances. You do not move the furniture in a mirror by reaching into the silvered glass. You move the furniture in the room. When your internal frequency shifts, the world has no choice but to rearrange itself to match you. It is a cosmic law, as cold and as certain as gravity, yet as fluid as water. If you see lack, it is because you are radiating the geometry of the void. If you see resistance, it is because you are carrying a shield. The alchemist does not fight the reflection. The alchemist changes the posture of the soul. The parable of the glass sculptor. In the city of 1,000 shards, there lived a master artisan known as Bellows. The city was unique, for its walls were lined with mirrors of every size and curvature. The citizens were a miserable lot, forever distressed by the distortions they saw. A man would walk past a concave mirror and weep because he looked thin and sickly. Another would pass a convex glass and grow arrogant because he looked towering and vast. They spent their lives trying to drape cloths over the mirrors they disliked or throwing stones at the reflections that offended them. Bellows, however, sat in the center of the square with a block of raw, unformed crystal. He did not look at the mirrors. He kept his gaze fixed upon the stone in his lap. One day, a great general rode into the city. He was a man of immense earthly power, yet he was tormented. In every mirror he passed, he saw a fractured version of himself. His armor looked tarnished, his face appeared weary, and his sword seemed blunt. He approached Bellows in a rage. "Sculptor," the general roared, "the mirrors of this city are cursed. They mock my glory. Use your tools to grind them smooth. I want a world that reflects my true power." Bellows looked up, his eyes as clear as the crystal he carved. "General, the mirrors are perfect. It is your hands that tremble." The general drew his blade, but Bellows held up a small, hand-polished lens. "Look here," the sculptor whispered. As the general peered into the small lens, he saw not his face, but his heart. He saw the tremors of fear, the jagged edges of his own doubt, and the rust of his private anxieties. "To fix the statue in the glass," Bellows said softly, "you must first heal the tremors in the hand that holds the chisel. You have been trying to command the reflection to stand tall while you yourself are slumping under the weight of your own shadows." Bellows began to carve his crystal, not by looking at it, but by feeling the vibration of the form he desired. As he straightened his own spine and breathed with the rhythm of a king, the crystal beneath his hands began to glow. And then, a miracle occurred, as Bellows changed his internal state. Every mirror in the city, even the cracked and distorted ones, began to show a vision of order and light. The mirrors had not changed. The source had aligned. The internal geometry of wealth. You are the glass sculptor. Your life is the block of crystal, and the world is the city of 1,000 shards. When you seek abundance, your natural impulse is to look at your bank ledger, your empty calendar, or your quiet telephone, and declare, "I am lacking." In that moment, you have fallen for the trap of the reflection. By acknowledging the lack, you are projecting the image of the seeker onto the mirror. The mirror, being faithful, reflects seeking back to you. This creates a loop of perpetual wanting. You can never arrive at abundance if your starting frequency is arrival has not yet happened. Mirror alchemy requires you to perform a sacred tilt. You must learn to look at the reflection of not enough, and, instead of reacting with fear, look through it to the internal reality you have chosen to inhabit. This is why the practice must be silent. If you tell the world, "I am a king," while your internal mirror is still showing a beggar, the world will laugh, and that laughter will further distort your reflection. But if you feel the weight of the crown in the silence of your own mind, if you walk with the inner gait of one who has already provided for the mirror, will eventually be forced to catch up. There is a lag in the physical world, a brief interval between the internal shift and the external manifestation. Most people fail because they look at the mirror during this interval, see that nothing has changed, and revert to their old frequency of despair. The alchemist knows the lag is an illusion. The alchemist knows that the moment the internal light changes, the reflection is already rewritten. It simply hasn't reached the eyes yet. The axiom of the gaze. Do not describe the reflection. Dictate the source. Stop narrating your problems. When you speak of your struggles, you are tracing the cracks in the mirror with a permanent marker. You are making the distortion more real by giving it the breadth of your voice. Silence is the solvent that dissolves the unwanted image. By refusing to speak of hard times or scarcity, you stop feeding the reflection. You starve the shadow of its substance. The silent practice, the golden projection. This ritual is to be performed before a physical mirror, but your eyes will not be used for seeing. They will be used for projecting. Stand before a mirror in your home. Ensure you are alone. Look at your reflection, but do not judge the skin, the clothes, or the surroundings. Look directly into your own pupils, the black suns of your soul. The recognition. Acknowledge that everything behind you, in the glass, is the past. It is the result of yesterday's thoughts. It is a dead image. It has no power to dictate what happens next. The withdrawal. Close your eyes. Feel your energy pulling back from the room, back from the glass, and settling into the center of your chest. Feel yourself as the only point of consciousness in a vast, dark void. The casting from this dark void begin to generate the feeling of total, effortless abundance. Do not think of objects. Think of the sensation of being saturated. Feel as though every pore of your skin is breathing in liquid gold. Feel the relaxation in your jaw that comes when every debt is paid and every desire is met. The overlay. Open your eyes. Look at the mirror again. But this time, do not see the room as it is. Imagine a golden film, shimmering, alchemical overlay between you and the glass. See your reflection through this veil of wealth. The seal whispered to the reflection, I recognize you no longer. I see only that which I project. Turn away from the mirror, and do not look back at it for at least an hour. Carry that golden projection with you into the world. When you see a bill, see it through the gold. When you see a challenge, see it through the gold. You are not pretending. You are exercising your sovereign right as the source of the reflection. The world may continue to show you shards for a time, but you must be as the glass sculptor, unmoved, breathing the rhythm of the finished work. The mirrors must eventually obey the master. Chapter 3. The Invisible Act. The world is obsessed with the record. It believes that a deed does not exist unless it is witnessed, and that a virtue carries no value unless it is appraised by the public eye. You have been conditioned to believe that your worth is a sum of your visible outputs, your likes, your accolades, and the testimonies of those who have seen you succeed. This is the great leak. In the economy of the spirit, the moment an act is displayed for the sake of recognition, its internal pressure is released, and its alchemical potential evaporates. The law of silent abundance operates on the principle of the cistern. A cistern that is open to the sun and the wind loses its water to evaporation. A cistern that is sealed deep within the stone remains cool, pure, and overflowing. To build true, unshakable prosperity, you must learn the art of the invisible act, the performance of power, with no audience but the infinite. When you do a thing in secret, you are telling the universe that you do not need the validation of the world to be whole. You are asserting that your internal authority is absolute. This creates a vacuum of energy that the cosmos is compelled to fill. By refusing the small change of human praise, you clear the way for the gold of divine providence. The parable of the nameless mason. In the age when the great cathedral of Oros was raised, there were thousands of stonemasons who carved their names into every block they hewn. They wanted the pilgrims of future centuries to know who had shaped the pillars and who had arched the vaults. They spent half their time carving the stone, and the other half polishing their signatures so the light would catch them. Among them was a man known only as the Quiet One. He worked in the deepest parts of the foundation, in the trenches where the damp earth met the first layers of granite, while the other masons climbed the scaffolds to work in the sight of the king. The Quiet One remained in the mud. He carved stones of exquisite precision, stones so perfectly squared that not even a hair could fit between the joints. But the Quiet One did something the others found madness. He carved his most intricate designs, his most sacred symbols, and his deepest prayers on the underside of the blocks, the side that would face the dark earth forever, never to be seen by a human eye. Once the wall was set, "Why do you waste your craft on the dirt?" the master mason asked him. "No man will ever see the beauty of that carving. You gain no reputation, no extra coin, and no glory. You are throwing your life into the shadows." The Quiet One wiped the grit from his brow and smiled. "The king does not see these stones," he whispered, "but the earth feels their weight. Because my work has no witness, the stone does not have to pretend to be beautiful. It simply is beautiful. And because it is secret, the strength I put into it stays inside the wall. The stones with names on them will eventually crack under the weight of their own vanity. My stones will hold this cathedral until the stars go out, because they carry only the power of the act itself." Centuries later, a great earthquake leveled the city of Oros. Every pillar with a signature crumbled. Every arch with a name fell to dust. Only the foundation remained immovable, silent, and perfect. The strength of the temple lived in the parts that no one had ever applauded. The alchemy of the unseen deed. To practice the invisible act is to build the foundation of your life with underside carvings. Most people invest their energy in things that provide an immediate social return. They give to charity so they can be thanked. They work hard so they can be promoted. They cultivate a brand so they can be envied. This is not abundance. It is commerce. It is a one-to-one transaction that leaves the spirit exhausted. When you perform an act of abundance in total secrecy, you break the cycle of commerce and enter the realm of grace. If you wish to increase your financial flow, give a sum of money where it is needed, but do so in a way that the recipient can never trace it back to you. If you wish to be seen as a leader, perform an act of service for your community that no one, not even your closest kin, knows you did. If you are working on a masterpiece, keep the canvas turned to the wall when guests arrive. Why? Because the energy of that act has nowhere to go but inward. It settles into your bones. It thickens your aura. It creates a quiet gravity around you. People will begin to sense that you possess a hidden wellspring of power, but they will not be able to point to its source. This makes you untouchable. They cannot take what they cannot see. They cannot criticize what they do not know exists. The axiom of the shadow work: that which is done for the eye of man belongs to man. That which is done for the eye of the all belongs to the infinite. When you keep your abundance secret, you are nesting your reality within the divine mind. You are shifting from being a performer to being a participant in the unfolding of the cosmos. The ego hates this. The ego wants to be the star of the show. It will scream at you to share your win or tell your story. It will tell you that if you don't broadcast your success, it didn't really happen. Ignore the ego. It is a beggar looking for scraps of attention. You are a sovereign looking for the banquet of silence. The silent practice, the secret deposit. This week, you are invited to perform your first invisible act. It must be something that costs you something, either time, effort, or resources, and it must be something that could easily bring you praise if you revealed it. The selection: choose a deed. It could be leaving an anonymous gift, fixing a neighbor's broken gate in the dead of night, or completing a significant portion of a creative project without mentioning it to a soul. The execution: perform the act with the same reverence you would use if you were presenting a gift to a deity. Do it perfectly. Do not cut corners, because no one is looking. Remember the nameless mason. The earth feels the weight of the stone. The internalization after the act is finished, and the urge to tell someone rises in your throat as it inevitably will swallow it. Feel that urge as a physical sensation. It is the energy of the act trying to escape. By staying silent, you are forcing that energy to stay in your body. The anchor: sit in silence for 10 minutes. Visualize the energy of that hidden deed flowing through your veins like liquid silver. See it strengthening your foundation. The vow whispered to the air: this is for the unseen. This is for the source. My power is my own. Observe how your posture changes over the following days. You will find that you walk with more weight, not the weight of a burden, but the weight of a mountain. You will find that your words carry more authority because they are backed by a reservoir of secret strength. You are no longer a hollow reed whistling in the wind of public opinion. You are a solid stone, carved on the underside with the geometry of the gods. Chapter 4. Protection from external doubt. The most fragile moment for any living thing is the interval between its conception and its hardening. A sprout is at the mercy of the frost. A dream is at the mercy of a sneer. In the journey toward silent abundance, your greatest adversary is not a lack of resources, nor is it a failing of the stars. Your greatest adversary is the psychic pollution of the collective doubt, the low-frequency static emitted by those who have forgotten how to dream and who, in their amnesia, seek to wake you from yours. To walk the path of the interior is to carry a lit candle through a gale. Every person you meet carries a gust of their own limitations, their own rational fears, and their own bruised expectations. If you are not shielded, their gaze alone can dim your light. Protection from external doubt is not an act of hostility toward others. It is an act of supreme hospitality toward your own soul. It is the building of a sanctuary where the impossible is allowed to breathe until it becomes the I am. The world will tell you that you are delusional if you do not acknowledge the scarcity it sees. It will call you unrealistic if you do not participate in its anxieties. You must learn to hear these labels, not as critiques, but as confirmation that you are no longer vibrating at the level of the common struggle. The parable of the weaver of mists. In a valley choked by the gray dust of substance that turned everything it touched into heavy, colorless lead, there lived a woman known as the weaver of mists. The people of the valley were bitter and slow. They spent their days counting their misfortunes and warning one another of the great impossibility of ever leaving the gray shadows. They believed that if one person dared to hope for color, the dust would grow heavier for everyone. The weaver, however, walked through the market with a step as light as a dragonfly's wing, while others wore tunics of iron and lead to protect themselves from the world. She wore nothing but a garment she had woven from the morning's breath and the silver silence of the high peaks. A group of merchants, burdened by their heavy carts and heavier hearts, surrounded her. "Weaver," they mocked, "why do you dress in nothingness? Do you not see the dust? Do you not feel the wind that blows from the caves of despair? Your garment offers no shield. One word of truth from us could tear your fabric to shreds." The weaver smiled, but she did not look at their faces. She looked through them, at the horizon they had forgotten. "Your words are stones," she said softly, "and stones only break that which is hard. My garment is not made of thread, it is made of the space between your thoughts." One merchant, the most cynical of the lot, shouted a list of her failures, her lack of land, her empty pantry, the many times she had stayed silent when she should have complained. He threw his most jagged doubts at her like daggers. But as the words reached her, they did not pierce. They simply slowed down, lost their edge, and fell into the mist of her cloak. The weaver did not argue. She did not defend her joy. She simply pulled the mist closer, turning her internal frequency to a hum so high and so pure that the merchant's voice sounded like a distant, harmless buzzing of a fly. She walked past them, and where her feet touched the gray earth, the lead turned back into emerald grass. She was not protected because she was strong. She was protected because she was elsewhere, the sanctuary of the sealed perimeter. To protect yourself from the doubt of others, you must stop trying to win the argument. The moment you attempt to convince a skeptic of your potential, you have already lost. Why? Because by engaging with their doubt, you are granting it status. You are bringing it into the laboratory of your manifestation and giving it a seat at the table. External doubt operates on the law of intrusion. If two pendulums are swinging at different speeds, the stronger, more consistent rhythm will eventually pull the other into its pace. Most people's doubt is a very old, very consistent rhythm. If you allow yourself to swing with them in conversation, your fragile, new frequency of abundance will be pulled back down into their rhythm of lack. Silence is your primary shield. When you are in the presence of those who dwell in scarcity, you must practice the hushed interior. You may speak of the weather. You may speak of the bread. You may offer them kindness, but you must never offer them your gold. You must keep your high-frequency intentions behind a veil of mist. This is why we do not share our rituals. This is why we do not broadcast our progress. Every time you explain how you are succeeding, you provide the skeptic with a handle they can use to pull you down. If they do not know what you are doing, they have nothing to grip. The axiom of the invisible wall. The world cannot dismantle what it cannot define. Your abundance is a private country. It has its own laws, its own currency, and its own climate. When you step out into the public world, you are like a diplomat. You move through their territory. You respect their customs, but you remain subject only to the laws of your home sovereign. You do not need the citizens of the world to believe in your country for it to exist. The silent practice, the luminous shroud. This is a visualization to be used whenever you must enter an environment of high doubt, criticism, or hustle culture, noise. It is the art of weaving your own mist, the centering. Before you enter a room or a conversation, take 3 breaths. With each inhale, imagine drawing light from the hidden seed in your navel, from chapter 1, the expansion. As you exhale, see that light expanding outward, not as a hard wall of glass, but as a dense, shimmering fog. It surrounds you in a sphere, 3 feet in every direction. The filtration. Visualize the surface of this fog. It is a semi-permeable membrane. It allows love, information, and practical truth to pass through. However, any word of doubt, any frequency of not enough, and any vibration of impossibility gets caught in the mist like a moth in a web. The dissolution. See those negative words lose their color. See them turn into harmless gray dust and fall to the ground outside your sphere. They cannot reach your skin. They cannot enter your ears. They are merely sounds in the wind. The inner hum. While people speak, keep a small portion of your attention on the hum at the center of your chest. This is your home frequency. As long as you can feel that hum, the weaver's mist is intact. If someone asks you directly, how will you manage? Or are you not afraid of the economy? Do not answer with a plan. Answer with a mystery. A simple, I find that things have a way of resolving themselves, is enough. By refusing to provide a rational defense, you remain in the law of silent abundance. You are protecting the hidden seed from the frost of their common sense. Remember, you do not owe the world an explanation for your peace. Your only duty is to remain in the sanctuary of your own frequency until the invisible has become so solid that no amount of doubt could ever shake it. The weaver did not fight the gray. She simply refused to be gray. Chapter 5. The frequency of the enough. The greatest theft ever committed against the human spirit was the replacement of enough with more. In the kingdom of the mundane, you are taught that abundance is a mountain with no summita, perpetual climb where the air grows thinner and the heart grows harder. This is the vibration of the hungry ghost, a state of being where every gain is immediately swallowed by the void of the next desire. To walk the path of the law of silent abundance, you must commit a radical act of spiritual treason. You must settle into the frequency of the enough. Enough is not a measurement of your bank balance, the acreage of your land, or the contents of your larder. It is a resonant tone within the soul. It is the realization that the universe is not a stingy parent doling out allowances, but a river that is always flowing. When you vibrate at the frequency of I need, you are signaling to the cosmos that you are empty. The mirror of reality, as we learned in Mirror Alchemy, reflects that emptiness back to you in the form of delays, debts, and droughts. But when you inhabit the frequency of enough, you are signaling that you are a full vessel. By the law of entrainment, the physical world must then rush to fill the spaces around you to match your internal state. You do not get what you want, you get what you are. The parable of the desert alchemist in the heart of the red wastes, where the sun scours the earth and water is weighed in drops of silver. There lived an alchemist who never traveled with a caravan, while others crossed the sands laden with heavy barrels of wine and sacks of grain. The alchemist walked with nothing but a small wooden bowl and a walking staff of weathered cedar. A prince of a dying dynasty, fleeing a lost rebellion, stumbled upon the alchemist's camp. The prince was parched, his tongue like a shard of dry bark. He looked at the alchemist's meager possessions and wept. "We are doomed," the prince groaned. "You have no well, no stores, and no gold to buy our passage from the nomadic tribes. We shall die in this emptiness." The alchemist did not look up from the small fire of dried brush. He took his wooden bowl and held it out into the dry, shimmering heat of the noon sun. "My prince," he said, "you see the desert as an absence. I see it as a fullness that has not yet decided what shape to take." The alchemist closed his eyes. He did not pray for water. He did not beg the heavens for mercy. Instead, he simply breathed as if his thirst was already quenched. He felt the coolness of a mountain spring in his throat. He felt the weight of a feast in his belly. He occupied the frequency of satiation in the middle of a wasteland. Slowly, the air around the bowl began to shimmer. Moisture, pulled from the invisible breath of the wind, began to bead upon the wood. Within an hour, the bowl was brimming with water that tasted of melted snow. Later, when a band of fierce raiders approached, the alchemist did not hide. He offered them the water. The raiders, struck by the man's absolute lack of fire, lack that can only come from one who already possesses everything, bowed to him and offered him their finest dates and salted meats in exchange for his blessing. "How do you turn the sand into a kingdom?" the prince asked, revived and astonished. "I do not turn the sand into anything," the alchemist replied. "I simply refuse to agree with the desert that there is not enough. I carry my enough within me. Because I am not hungry, the world feeds me. Because I am not poor, the world gives me its gold. The desert only kills those who bring their own emptiness into it." The axiom of the saturated soul. Desire is a confession of lack. Presence is the claim of ownership. The secret that the hustle world will never tell you is that the moment you stop chasing, the object of your chase begins to track you. When you are in the frequency of the enough, you emit a psychic scent of success that the universe finds irresistible. Think of the difference between a beggar and a host. A beggar reaches out, eyes wide with the fear of being denied. A host stands back, arms open, offering what they already have. The law of silent abundance asks you to be the host of your own life. Even if you have only a crust of bread, eat it with the elegance of a king at a banquet. Even if you have only a single coin, carry it in your pocket as if it were the seed of 1,000,000. When you act from enough, your actions are clean. They are not tainted by the frantic energy of "I must have this" or "I am nothing." This lack of desperation is the most powerful manifestation tool in existence. It removes the friction between your thought and the physical result. The silent practice, the feast of the satiated heart. This practice is to be done during a meal, in total solitude and silence. It is designed to recalibrate your nervous system from the seeking mode to the having mode. The preparation. Set your table as if for an honored guest. Use your best plate, even if you are eating something simple. Light a single candle. The flame represents the spark of the divine that is always provided for. The sensory audit. Before you eat, look at your food. See the colors. Acknowledge the incredible chain of events, the sun, the rain, the soil, the hands of laborers that brought this nourishment to your table. Realize that at this moment, you are being sustained by the entire cosmos. The assumption of wealth. As you take the first bite, do not chew quickly. Let the flavor fill your senses. While you eat, repeat silently, "I am the guest of the infinite. My table is never empty." 4. The expansion of enough. Feel the sensation of the food entering your body. Do not focus on the filling of your stomach, but on the filling of your frequency. Imagine that this one meal is proof of an eternal supply. The closing, when you are finished. Leave a small portion on the plate, just a crumb or a sip. This is a symbolic gesture to the universe. It says, "I have had so much that I have more than I need." This is the signature of the wealthy. For the rest of the day, whenever the thought of a bill or a shortage enters your mind, return to the physical memory of that feast. Touch your thumb and forefinger together and whisper to yourself, "The alchemist is in the desert, and the bowl is full." By practicing the enough, you are desensitizing yourself to the propaganda of scarcity. You are becoming wealth heavy. You will find that opportunities begin to fall into your lap, not because you fought for them, but because your frequency has become a magnet for its own likeness. The world seeks those who do not need it. Be the one who is already full. and watch how the world begs to add to your store. Chapter 6. The Echo of Stillness. The world is a storm of noise, but it is not the noise of the marketplace or the clamor of the streets that drowns the spirit. It is the noise of the thinking mind, that restless, frantic narrator that believes it must scream to be heard by the divine. You have been taught that to get what you want, you must ask, affirm, visualize, and demand. But in the high court of silent abundance, the most powerful prayer is the one that contains no words at all. It is the echo of stillness. Abundance is not a broadcast, it is a reception. If your internal radio is constantly transmitting the static of your desires, your worries, and your strategic plans, you cannot hear the subtle, gold-threaded frequency of the solution. The universe speaks in the spaces between your thoughts. It navigates through the gaps. To find your direction, you must stop being the one who shouts and start being the one who listens to the echo. Stillness is not the absence of sound. It is the presence of an immense, underlying power. It is the great background upon which the movie of your life is projected. When you align with that background, you cease to be a character struggling with the plot and become the screen itself, untouched, vast, and containing everything. The parable of the blind navigator. In the era of the iron mist, there was a sea so treacherous that no lighthouse could pierce its gloom. The rocks were like the teeth of a starving beast, and the currents shifted with the whims of a fever. Many captains, armed with the finest brass telescopes and the loudest foghorns, attempted to cross. They shouted orders until their throats bled. They rang bells until the metal cracked, and one by one, their ships were splintered upon the hidden reefs. There was, however, a navigator who had no eyes. He sailed a ship with no name, and his crew was sworn to a vow of absolute silence. When the ship entered the iron mist, the navigator did not command the men to row harder. He did not consult a map. Instead, he ordered the anchors to be lifted and the sails to be furled. He sat at the prow of the ship, leaning forward into the gray nothingness. He did not look for the rocks. He listened for the absence of the sea. A young cabin boy, terrified by the encroaching dark, whispered, "Master, how can we move? We are blind and the wind has died. We are drifting to our deaths." The navigator did not turn. "We are not drifting, child. We are being pulled by the stillness. The rocks have a sound, a low, heavy thrum that eats the silence. The open water has an echo, a hollow, silver ring that goes on forever. I do not steer the ship. I simply move away from the noise. By listening to where the silence felt thin or heavy, the navigator felt the invisible path. He could sense the weight of a distant mountain and the hollow of a deep trench simply by how the stillness vibrated against his skin. While the seeing captains crashed because they reacted to what they thought they saw, the blind navigator reached the Golden Isles because he followed what the silence knew. The art of passive navigation. You are the navigator, and your life is currently shrouded in the iron mist of uncertainty. Your instinct is to shout, to work harder, to plan more intensely, to manifest with more aggression. But the more noise you make, the more you drown out the silver echo of your intuition. Abundance is already moving toward you. It is a current of high-frequency energy that seeks the path of least resistance. When you are still, you become that path. Think of a lake. When the surface is whipped by the wind of thought, the reflection of the moon is fragmented into 1,000 jagged, unrecognizable pieces. You cannot see the depth. You cannot see the treasures at the bottom. But when the wind dies and the water settles into a state of perfect doing nothing, the moon sits upon the surface in its full, undivided glory. The water didn't go to the moon. It simply became still enough to host it. The echo of stillness requires you to trust the void. We are terrified of the empty space. We fill our silences with music, our idle moments with screens, and our mental gaps with worry. We do this because we fear that if we are not doing, we are losing. But in the law of silent abundance, the gap is where the gold is deposited. The axiom of the resonant void. The flute is only useful because of the emptiness inside it. Your life is the music, but your silence is the instrument. If you want the music of abundance to play through you, you must stop stuffing the flute with the cotton of your anxieties. You must become hollow. You must develop the courage to sit in a room and do nothing until the echo tells you which way to turn. This is not laziness. It is high-level, spiritual intelligence. One move made from the center of stillness is worth 10,000 moves made from the frantic energy of the hustle. The silent practice, the listening wall. This practice is to be performed twice daily, once at the rising of the sun and once at its setting. It is the training of the inner ear, the seating. Sit in a chair with your spine straight but not rigid. Place your hands palm up on your knees. This is the posture of the receiver. The sensory withdrawal. Close your eyes. Instead of trying to quiet your mind, which only creates more noise, simply turn your attention to the farthest sound you can hear. Perhaps it is a bird, a car, or the hum of a refrigerator. The layering. Once you find that sound, look behind it. What is the silence that allows that sound to exist? Move your attention past the noise and into the background, the echo. Now, pose a single, silent question to your abundance, not a how or a when, but a where. Where is the flow? Do not wait for a voice to answer. Listen for a feeling of weight. If a thought feels heavy, loud, or tight, that is a rock in the mist. Move away from it. If a thought or a direction feels spacious, cool, or resonant, that is the open water, the integration. Stay in this state for 15 minutes. When you open your eyes, do not immediately rush into action. Carry the hollow feeling with you. You will find that throughout the day, your inner navigator begins to give you nudges. You might feel a sudden, quiet urge to call a specific person, to walk down a different street, or to let a lucrative but heavy-feeling deal go by. Trust the echo. The world will call you blind because you are not following the maps of the marketplace. But like the navigator of the mist, you will find yourself docked at the Golden Isles, while the seeing world is still arguing with the reefs. Abundance is a sound. To hear it, you must first become the silence. Chapter 7. The weight of possession. To the world, wealth is a collection of things, a gathering of stones, metals, and papers that one heaps upon the self until the soul is buried beneath the pile. The world measures a man by his net worth, which is a ledger of what he holds. But in the law of silent abundance, true wealth is measured by what you are free to let go. To achieve everything by doing nothing, you must first master the art of spiritual buoyancy. You must understand that every possession, whether it be a physical object, a rigid opinion, or a clinging memory, carries a specific gravitational weight. If you are anchored to the floor of the ocean by the weight of your treasures, you can never rise to the surface where the light is. The frequency of abundance is a high, airy vibration. It cannot inhabit a vessel that is heavy with the past or cluttered with the redundant. To doing nothing effectively, you must be light enough for the current of grace to carry you. If you are heavy, you must row. If you are light, you simply flow. Possession is often an act of fear. We hold tightly to things because we do not trust the infinite to provide the next moment. We hoard because we believe in once rather than always. But the alchemist knows that the universe is a river, and to try and bottle the river is to end up with stagnant water. The parable of the mountain climber with the lead cloak. In the foothills of the Peak of Transfiguration, there was a village of seekers. They all desired to reach the summit, for it was said that at the top, the air itself turned into gold, and the silence granted every wish. However, the path was steep, and the gravity of the mountain was unlike any other in the world. Among the seekers was a man of great earthly success named XIII. He believed that, to reach the top, one must be prepared for every calamity. He wore a cloak lined with leaden weights to strengthen his legs. He carried a pack filled with silver instruments, silken ropes, 3 sets of iron boots, and enough dried meat to last a decade. He even carried a golden chair, for he refused to sit upon the common earth when he rested. "You will never clear the first ridge," warned an old woman who sat by the trailhead, spinning wool that seemed to be made of clouds. "Nonsense," XIII scoffed. "I am prepared. I own the best tools. I possess the resources to endure." XIII began his ascent. For every step he took upward, his boots sank inches into the stone. The leaden cloak pulled at his shoulders. The golden chair bruised his back. He was doing everything. He was straining, sweating, and shouting mantras of willpower. But by noon, he had only moved 100 paces, while the mountain seemed to grow taller above him. Beside him, A young girl walked with empty hands. She wore a simple linen tunic and carried nothing, not even a flask of water. She didn't seem to be climbing at all. She looked as though she were merely stepping from one breath to the next. "Child," Kaylin barked, "where is your gear? How will you survive the summit?" "The summit provides the gear," she sang out, her voice floating above his heavy panting. "I cannot carry the mountain and climb it at the same time." Kaylin watched in disbelief as the girl reached a sheer wall. Instead of hammering pitons into the rock as he did, she simply leaned back, as if trusting the wind. Because she had no weight to anchor her to the valley, the mountain's own upward draft caught her linen tunic and lifted her. She rose like a seed on the breeze. Kaylin, pinned to the rock by his valuable equipment, eventually had to choose his possessions or the peak. He unbuckled his pack. He cast off his leaden cloak. He watched his golden chair tumble into the abyss. Only when his hands were completely empty did the crushing gravity of the mountain release its grip. He did not have to climb. He simply ceased to be held down. The buoyancy of detachment. To practice silent abundance, you must perform a gravity audit of your life. Possessions are not merely the things in your cupboards. They are the things in your mind. Do you possess a story of how hard you've worked? That is a leaden cloak. Do you possess a grudge against those who doubted you? That is a bag of stones. Do you possess a fixed identity as a successful or unsuccessful person? That is the golden chair you are trying to carry up a vertical cliff. When you hold on to an identity or an object with a white-knuckled grip, you are telling the universe, "This is all I have, and I do not trust you to give me more." This is the ultimate noise. It drowns out the law of abundance. True abundance is the ability to use everything and need nothing. It is the state of being wealthy in motion. You allow resources to flow through you. Money comes, money goes. Praise comes, praise goes. Objects enter your life, and they exit. You do not define yourself by the transit. You define yourself by the source. The axiom of the open palm. A closed fist can protect a penny, but it can never receive a diamond. The doing nothing path requires an open palm. When your life is cluttered physically, mentally, or energetically, there is no room for the miraculous to land. The universe abhors a vacuum, but it also respects a boundary. If you have filled every corner of your existence with stuff and certainties, the infinite looks at you and sees a full vessel that needs nothing more. It passes you by to find the empty vessel that is ready for the rain. The silent practice, the rite of the great release. This practice is divided into two parts, the physical clearing and the metaphysical void. Part 1, the physical clearing. Find 3 objects in your immediate environment that you are holding on to, just in case or out of a sense of past identity. They must be things that have a lingering emotional weight. Release them, give them away, discard them, or move them out of your sanctuary. As you do, say nothing. Do not explain the act to anyone. Feel the physical space they leave behind. That space is now a landing strip for the new. Part 2. The metaphysical void. Sit in your newly cleared space. The inventory. Close your eyes and visualize yourself standing on a vast, flat plain. Around your feet are all your titles, your bank accounts, your memories, and your plans. See them as physical objects, crates, jars, and stones. The rising wind. Imagine a warm, powerful wind beginning to blow across the plain. This is the breath of the infinite, the letting go. One by one, see the wind pick up these objects. Watch your title blow away. Watch your bank balance disappear into the horizon. Watch your greatest achievement vanish. The buoyancy, as the plane becomes empty. Feel your body becoming lighter. Feel the gravity of the earth losing its pull on your skin. You are not falling. You are beginning to hover. The affirmation of being, in this state of total nothingness. Realize that you still exist. You are the one who is observing the emptiness. This observer is the true abundance. It is the only thing that cannot be taken, and therefore, it is the only thing that can attract everything. Repeat silently. I carry nothing. I lack nothing. I am the space where the all appears. When you return to your day, do not rush to refill your time or your space. Enjoy the slight emptiness in your chest. That emptiness is the frequency of the summit. You are now light enough to be carried. Abundance is not a hoard, it is a height, and only the unburdened can breathe the air at the top. Chapter 8. The Breath of the Infinite. The world perceives the breath as a mere biological necessity, rhythmic, unconscious exchange of gases that sustains the animal body. But in the sanctuary of silent abundance, the breath is the loom upon which reality is woven. It is the golden thread connecting the finite you to the infinite all. Most souls live in a state of spiritual suffocation. They take short, jagged breaths of anxiety, as if the very air were a scarce commodity they must compete for. To master the art of doing nothing, you must first master the art of receiving the wind. The law of silent abundance declares that there is no separation between your internal state and the cosmic supply. The breath is the physical bridge over that perceived gap. When you breathe with the awareness of a master, you are not just taking in oxygen. You are inhaling the prana of prosperity. You are synchronized with the expansion and contraction of the universe itself. If you are hustling, your breath is trapped in your chest. If you are worrying, your breath is held in suspension. In both states, you have severed your connection to the source. You have become a closed system, and a closed system eventually runs out of energy. To achieve everything by letting go, you must breathe as if the entire atmosphere belonged to you because, in the frequency of the truth, it does. The parable of the flute carver. In the high, thin air of the blue mountains, there lived a flute carver whose instruments were sought by kings, yet he refused to sell them for gold. His flutes did not look like the polished, ornate things found in the royal courts. They were gnarled, simple branches of elder and bone, marked only by the holes he had placed with a red-hot needle. A young musician, famous for his technical speed and his complex compositions, traveled many moons to find the carver. "Master," the musician pleaded, "I have played for the greatest audiences in the world, yet my music feels hollow. It lacks the power to move the heart. Sell me the flute that contains the song of life." The carver looked at the young man's heaving chest and his hurried movements. He handed the musician a flute made of plain, gray wood. "The song is not in the wood," the carver whispered. "The song is in the space where you and the wind become one." The musician blew into the flute with all his might. He played scales of incredible difficulty. He forced the air through the instrument with the precision of a soldier. But the sound that emerged was shrill, thin, and desperate. It sounded like a bird trapped in a cage. "You are trying to command the air," the carver said, taking the flute back. "You are treating the breath as a tool to be used, rather than a guest to be hosted." The carver sat on a stone. He did not prepare his fingers. He simply closed his eyes and began to breathe. He breathed so deeply and so slowly that it seemed his entire body had become hollow. When he finally placed the flute to his lips, he did not blow. He simply allowed the exhale of his soul to pass through the wood. The sound that emerged was not a melody. It was a cathedral of vibration. It tasted of the forest, the stars, and the ancient silence of the peaks. The musician wept, for he realized that the carver wasn't playing the flute at all. The carver had become the flute, and the infinite was breathing through him. "To find the song," the carver said, "you must stop trying to make music. You must simply provide the emptiness, and let the breath of the infinite do the rest." The rhythm of cosmic supply. Your life is the flute. Your intentions are the holes. But the breath is the abundance itself. When you live in the hustle, you are like the young musician trying to force a result through sheer willpower and exertion. You are blowing too hard. You are creating friction and noise. This is why, despite your efforts, the results feel shrill or hollow. You are exhausted because you believe you are the source of the wind. Silent abundance requires you to shift your identity from the player to the instrument. When you realize that the infinite is already breathing life into the world, your only job is to remain unobstructed. Consider the tides. They do not try to reach the shore. They are moved by a celestial rhythm that is far larger than the water itself. When you align your personal rhythm, your breath, with this cosmic tide, you stop fighting for resources. You start being carried by them. This is the secret of achieving everything by letting go. You let the infinite do the heavy lifting of your existence, while you simply provide the resonance. The axiom of the sacred inhale. The universe never asks for a receipt for the air. Why do you treat its other gifts with such suspicion? The very act of breathing is a 24-hour-day demonstration of abundance. You never worry if there will be enough air for your next breath. You do not hoard oxygen in jars. You do not compete with your neighbor for the atmosphere. You trust. This trust is the blueprint for all wealth. If you can trust the air, you can trust the gold. If you can trust the breath, you can trust the destiny. The silent practice, the golden bellows. This practice is to be performed in the gray hours, the moments just before sleep or just after waking. It is designed to retrain your nervous system to recognize the infinite supply. The posture: lie flat on your back, hands resting lightly on your lower ribs. Feel the rise and fall of your frame. The fourfold gait. We shall use a rhythm that mimics the cycle of the seasons. Inhale, 4 counts. Visualize the air as a golden mist entering your body. This is the spring, the arrival of new potential. Hold 4 counts. Feel the mist saturating your cells. This is the summer, the fullness of possession. Exhale for counts. Release the breath completely. This is the autumn, the graceful letting go. The void for counts. Stay empty. This is the winter, the holy silence before the new, the removal of the I. As you continue this rhythm, stop counting with your mind. Imagine that a great being is leaning over you, breathing into you. You are not doing the breathing. You are being breathed. The frequency of satiation. On the inhale, think. The all enters. On the exhale, think. The all provides. The ceiling. After 10 minutes, return to your natural breath. Notice the profound stillness in your limbs. You have just synchronized your small self with the great self. Throughout your day, whenever you feel the hustle rising, whenever you feel the urge to grab or force, stop for 10 seconds. Take 1 golden bellows breath. Remind yourself that the flute carver does not create the wind. He only hosts it. When you breathe with the infinite, you are never out of breath. And when you are never out of breath, you are never out of options, never out of time, and never out of wealth. The music is coming. You only need to be the hollow wood. Chapter 9. The Shadow's Contribution. The architects of the mundane world have built a philosophy upon the sand of perfection. They tell you that abundance is a sterile, brightly lit hall, where no dust settles and no darkness dwells. They instruct you to edit your soul, to excise your fears, to bury your failures, and to mask your scars with the gilding of positive thought. But the law of silent abundance is not a superficial polish. It is a deep earth alchemy. It understands that the gold is not found in the clouds, but in the heavy, pressurized veins of the underworld. To achieve everything, you must stop fleeing from your shadows and begin to harvest their hidden energy. Your shadow is not a defect. It is a reservoir of unrefined power. It is composed of every emotion you were told was unproductive, every mistake you were shamed for, and every part of your nature that did not fit into the narrow boxes of the marketplace. When you suppress these aspects, you are not becoming pure. You are becoming thin. You are leaking the very vital force required to anchor your manifestations in the physical world. The shadow is the weight that gives a ship its keel. Without it, you are tossed by the slightest wind of public opinion. With it, you possess the gravity to withstand the storms of transformation. The parable of the potter of the broken kiln in the province of the glazed earth. There was a competition held once every decade to find the most beautiful vase in the empire. The potters of the capital used the finest white clay, purified water, and kilns that were scrubbed daily to ensure not a single speck of soot touched the porcelain. Their works were flawless, ethereal, and entirely identical. They were ghosts of art, beautiful but devoid of soul. At the edge of the forest lived an old woman known as the Potter of the Ash. Her kiln was an ancient, crumbling beast of stone that breathed thick, black smoke. One year, during a great storm, the roof of her workshop collapsed, and a torrent of rain and mud flooded her kiln mid-firing. The fire hissed and screamed, and the pots within were subjected to a violent, chaotic cooling. The villagers pitied her. "Your work is ruined," they said. "The smoke has stained the clay, and the minerals in the mud have scarred the surface. You have nothing to show but debris." The potter said nothing. She waited for the stones to cool. When she opened the kiln, She did not find the smooth, white perfection of the capital. She found vessels that looked as though they had been forged in the heart of a star. The soot had created a deep, midnight iridescence. The mud had melted into jagged, golden veins that raced across the dark clay like lightning. She took the most damaged vase to the emperor. When the judges saw it, they fell silent. Beside her vase, the perfect works of the capital looked like mere toys. The potter's vase had a weight, a presence, and a story. It felt alive. It did not just sit on the pedestal. It commanded the room. "How did you achieve this luster?" the emperor asked, mesmerized by the dark, swirling patterns. "I did not achieve it by avoiding the storm," the potter replied. "I achieved it by letting the smoke and the ash become the glaze. I used the very things that tried to break the pot to make it unbreakable. The beauty you see is not despite the ruin, it is the ruin, transformed. The alchemy of integrated lack. You are the pot, and your failures are the ash." Most people are terrified of their own ruin. They spend vast amounts of energy trying to hide their debt, their depression, or their past unsuccessful ventures. This act of hiding is an immense drain on your abundance frequency. It is like trying to hold a beach ball underwater. It requires constant effort and keeps your hands occupied so you cannot receive anything else. The law of silent abundance asks you to stop holding the ball. When you acknowledge your shadow, when you say, "Yes, I have known lack. Yes, I have felt the sting of defeat," you stop being a victim of those experiences and start being their master. You take the black smoke of your history and use it to create the iridescence of your future. A person who has integrated their shadow is far more magnetic than a person who is merely positive. Why? Because they are whole. They have a density of presence that others can feel. Abundance is attracted to wholeness, not to perfection. The universe does not reward the one who has never fallen. It rewards the one who has used the dirt from their fall to fertilize their garden. The axiom of the dark harvest. The root must endure the dark for the flower to enjoy the light. Do not curse the soil that feeds your height. If you are currently in a dark period, a season of quiet, of financial contraction, or of internal doubt, do not treat it as a mistake. Treat it as a pressurized firing. The universe is using the heat of your circumstances to bond the minerals of your character. The smoke you are sensing is the formation of your unique glaze. The silent practice, the shadow exchange. This practice is to be done in the late hours of the night, when the world is at its darkest. It is a ritual of reclamation. The naming. Take a piece of paper. Write down 3 things you consider to be your shadows, the things you are most ashamed of, or the failures you try hardest to hide. Do not use flowery language. Be blunt. The observation. Look at these words. Feel the heaviness they bring to your chest. Acknowledge that this heaviness is actually stored energy. It is a battery that has been incorrectly wired. The command of the alchemist. Place your hand over the words and whisper, "I no longer cast you out. I bring you in. Your weight is my strength. Your darkness is my depth." The visual fusion. Close your eyes. Imagine these shadows dissolving into a thick, dark ink. See this ink flowing into your body, coating your bones, making them stronger, denser, and more resilient. You are not being stained. You are being tempered. The seal of silence. Burn the paper. As the smoke rises, imagine it as the glaze of the potter. You are now a vessel that can hold a much higher frequency of abundance because you are no longer afraid of the dark. From this moment on, when you feel a negative emotion or remember a failure, do not push it away. Breathe into it. Say, "This is part of my gold." By doing this, you become unshakable. The world can no longer use your shadows against you because you have already claimed them. You have achieved the everything of wholeness by letting go of the need to be perfect. You are the potter, and the ash is your greatest ally. Chapter 10. The Feast of the Senses. The world is a traveler in a state of perpetual transit, eyes fixed upon a horizon that never arrives, feet trampling the wild flowers of the now in a frantic race toward the next. You have been taught that abundance is a future event, a harvest to be reaped, a destination to be reached, or a debt to be settled. But the law of silent abundance declares that the treasury of the infinite is not a vault at the end of a rainbow. It is the sensory texture of this very moment. To achieve everything by doing nothing, you must stop seeking wealth and begin tasting the reality that is already pressing against your skin. Presence is the only true currency. If you are not present, you are spiritually bankrupt, regardless of the gold in your coffers. If you cannot feel the weight of the water against your hands as you wash, or the intricate geometry of a single breath, you will not feel the abundance of 1,000,000 coins. The senses are the gates of the temple. When they are closed by the static of worry or the fog of digital distraction, the light of the universe cannot enter. To do nothing is to become an expert in the savor. It is to realize that the great architect did not create a world of gray utility, but a masterpiece of infinite detail. When you pay attention to that detail, you are giving the universe the highest form of prayer, recognition. The parable of the silent architect. In the kingdom of the gilded sight, the nobility vied to build the most ostentatious palaces. They filled their halls with mirrors from floor to ceiling, hung crystal chandeliers that blinded the eyes, and painted every surface in aggressive, clashing pigments. They believed that to be wealthy was to be seen and to see everything at once. Their lives were a blur of motion and light, yet they were plagued by a deep, gnawing boredom. A reclusive builder, known as the silent architect, was commissioned by the youngest prince to build a sanctuary. When the palace was finished, the prince was horrified. The exterior was plain, unadorned stone. There were no windows facing the bustling city. The halls were narrow and carved from a deep, matte black basalt. "You have built me a tomb," the prince cried. "I have built you a feast," the architect replied. "In your father's house, your eyes are so busy that your soul is starving. Here, the world will speak to you in its true voice." The architect led the prince into a room where a single, thin shaft of light fell upon a wall of rough-hewn cedar. Because there was no other light, the prince saw for the first time the microscopic grain of the wood, the silver dust motes dancing in the air, and the deep, resinous scent of the forest. He ran his hand over the stone floor, which had been polished to different temperatures, cool where he walked, and warm where the sun touched it. The prince sat. He heard the sound of a single drop of water falling into a copper basin 3 rooms away. He tasted the air, which was infused with the smell of rain-dampened earth from a small, hidden courtyard. For the first time in his life, the prince felt full. He felt as though he owned the entire world. Not because he sat upon a throne, but because he was finally inhabiting the space he occupied. "The others spend their lives looking at the map," the architect whispered. "You are finally standing on the land. Wealth is not having much, it is being much, the wealth of the immersive moment. You are the prince in the dark palace. Your palace is your physical body, and the architect is the law of silence. The hustle tells you to multitask, to optimize, and to consume. It turns the world into a background for your ambitions. But when you treat the world as a background, it treats you as a ghost. It offers you no nourishment. The feast of the senses is the practice of microabundance. It is the deliberate slowing of time until the doing dissolves into observing. When you drink a cup of tea with total presence, feeling the heat of the ceramic, smelling the steam, watching the amber swirl of the liquid, you are practicing the frequency of satiation. You are telling your nervous system, "I am provided for. I have time. I have luxury. I am here." This frequency is a massive magnet. The universe does not give more to those who are ungrateful for now. Why would it? If you cannot enjoy the drop, you will drown in the ocean. But when you demonstrate that you can find the infinite in the texture of a piece of bread, the universe recognizes you as a master of value. It begins to pour its riches toward you because it knows you will actually use them not as a hedge against future fear, but as a medium for current joy. The axiom of the golden eye. The eye of the master turns the pebble into a gem. The eye of the slave turns the gem into a burden. If you look at your life and see nothing happening, it is because your gaze is too fast. You are looking for big events and missing the small miracles. Abundance is a granular reality. It is composed of a billion tiny enoughs. When you master the small, the big takes care of itself. The silent practice. The 5-gate meditation. This practice is to be performed once a day, preferably with a mundane object, an orange, a stone, or a piece of fabric. It is the restoration of your sensory sovereignty, the gate of sight. Look at the object as if you have just arrived from another planet. Do not name it. Look at its shadows, its highlights, and its imperfections. See the sacred geometry of its form, the gate of touch. Close your eyes. Explore the object with your fingertips. Is it porous? Is it slick? Does it vibrate with the heat of your own hand? Feel the boundary where you end and the world begins. Realize that at the level of the atom, there is no boundary. The gate of sound. Bring the object to your ear, or simply listen to the silence around it. Listen for the hum of existence. Everything that exists is vibrating. You are listening to the music of the spheres in a grain of sand. The gate of scent. Inhale the essence of the moment. Even the air has a flavor, the scent of the season, the memory of the earth. The gate of gratitude. With your eyes still closed, feel the internal echo of these sensations. Say silently, I am here. I am full. The feast is served. Spend the next hour moving slowly. If you walk, feel the earth supporting your weight. If you speak, feel the vibration of the air in your throat. By doing this, you are stepping out of the time of the market and into the time of the soul. You are no longer waiting for abundance to arrive. You have realized that you are already sitting at the head of the table in the architect's palace. The world will wonder how you achieve so much while appearing so idle. They will not see that you are not idling. You are consuming reality at a higher resolution than they can imagine. Chapter 11. The Law of Not. The world is a theater of friction. From the moment you were cast into the stream of society, you were taught that the only way to move is to push. You were told that life is a series of obstacles to be overcome, doors to be forced, and currents to be conquered. This is the theology of the striver. The belief that the magnitude of your result is directly proportional to the intensity of your struggle. But the law of silent abundance reveals a higher, more elegant truth. The most powerful force in the universe is not the hammer that breaks the stone, but the water that flows around it. To achieve everything by letting go, you must relinquish the oars and become the river itself. Known resistance is not a state of passivity. It is a state of supreme, frictionless power. It is the refusal to grant status to opposition. When you fight a circumstance, you feed it your energy. You make the obstacle real by bracing against it. But when you cease to resist, the obstacle loses its grip on your reality. It becomes a shadow in the mist, in the frequency of silent abundance. There is no against, there is only the towards. If a door is closed, the non-resistant soul does not beat their fists against the wood. They simply turn their gaze to the door that is opening. They do not argue with the season. They change their garment. By doing nothing to oppose the what is, you allow the what could be to manifest without the distortion of your panic. The parable of the river sage. In the province of the jagged canyons, there was a great race held every 100 years. The prize was a crown of living light, said to grant the wearer dominion over their own destiny. The race took place upon the river of Thorns, a terrifying stretch of white water, whirlpools, and razor-sharp rocks that shredded the stoutest holes. The most famous warriors and merchants entered the race. They built massive boats of iron-reinforced oak. They hired the strongest rowers in the world. They equipped themselves with heavy chains and spiked poles to anchor themselves against the current and push away the rocks. On the day of the race, the river was a scene of carnage. The strong were screaming as their oars snapped. The ambitious were cursing as their heavy boats were caught in the eddies and smashed against the canyon walls. They were fighting the river with every fiber of their being, and the river was winning. At the back of the fleet was a small, flat-bottomed skiff made of simple reeds. In it sat the river sage, a man who carried no oars and no poles. He did not even have a rudder. He sat in the center of the skiff, his hands resting lightly on his knees, his eyes half closed as if in prayer. The warriors mocked him as they struggled past. "Old fool, you will be splinters before the first bend. The river is a beast, you must tame it." The sage did not answer. He was not looking at the rocks. He was feeling the vibration of the flow. When a whirlpool began to suck at his skiff, he did not row away. He leaned into the center of the vortex, allowing the spinning water to accelerate his momentum and spit him out on the other side. When a jagged rock loomed ahead, he did not push against it. He relaxed his body and the bow wave of the rock itself pushed the light skiff safely to the side. He was not doing anything to the river. He was allowing the river to do the work for him. Because he offered no resistance, the river did not treat him as an enemy to be broken, but as a part of itself to be carried. The sage reached the finish line hours before the exhausted, battered survivors of the iron boats. He was dry, he was rested, and his skiff was unscarred. "How did you conquer the thorns?" the king asked as he placed the crown of light upon the sage's head. "I did not conquer the river," the sage replied. "I simply stopped pretending I was separate from it. When I stopped fighting the water, I became the water, and the water never fights itself. The sovereignty of the yield. You are the sage. And the river of thorns is your current set of challenges, your debts, your delays, and your difficult transitions. The hustle tells you that winners never quit, but the law of non-resistance tells you that winners never fight. When you encounter a no in the world, your old habit is to push harder, to explain yourself more loudly, or to grow resentful. This is the iron boat strategy. It creates friction, and friction creates heat, and heat eventually burns out your manifestation engine. Non-resistance requires you to yield to the present moment. This does not mean you accept defeat. It means you accept the fact of the situation so that you can move through it without losing your frequency. If you are in a period of financial contraction, stop fighting the contraction with fear. Yield to it. Say, "This is the current of this hour." The moment you stop resisting the lack stops having power over your emotions. And once it stops having power over your emotions, it can no longer dictate your future reflection. Abundance flows toward the relaxed soul. Think of a muscle. It cannot receive blood and oxygen when it is tensed in a grip. It must relax to be nourished. Your life is the same. When you are gripping your goals with the tension of resistance, the universe cannot flow through you. You must soften your gaze and drop your shoulders. The axiom of the fluid path: the mountain stands, but the water arrives. Be the water. The mountain is impressive, but it is stuck. It must endure the wind and the rain until it turns to dust. But the water is free. It finds the path of least resistance. It goes under, around, or over. It never argues with the obstacle. It simply seeks the low point, where the flow is easiest. In your life, the low point is the path of joy, the path of least effort, and the path of the doing nothing heart, the silent practice, the dissolving wall. This practice is to be used whenever you feel blocked by a person, an event, or a circumstance. It is the ritual of the internal yield. The identification. Visualize the problem that is causing you stress. See it as a literal wall of cold, gray stone standing directly in your path. The feeling of resistance. Notice where you are pushing against this wall in your body. Is it in your jaw, your stomach, your fists? Feel the heat of your own frustration. Acknowledge that this heat is your energy, which you are wasting on the stone. The great softening. Take a deep breath as you exhale. Imagine your body turning from solid bone and muscle into clear, flowing water. Feel your tension melting into the floor. The flow-through. Now, look at the wall again. But instead of seeing yourself in front of it, imagine yourself simply flowing through the cracks in the stone. See the water of your being trickling through the mortar, bypassing the obstacle effortlessly. The statement of non-force whisper: I offer no surface for the world to strike. I am the flow, and the flow is never blocked. Stay in this fluid state for several minutes. Notice how the wall suddenly seems smaller, less important, and perhaps even ridiculous. When you return to your day, do not try to fix the problem immediately. Move toward what is working. Follow the opening rather than the closing. You will find that when you stop fighting the thorns, the river itself carries you to the golden isles. Abundance is a current, and the current has no use for your struggle. It only requires your permission to carry you home. Chapter the 12th. The Sovereign Interior. The world is a tempest of shifting sands, a theater where the weather of public opinion, economic tides, and the chaotic whims of others blow with relentless force. You have been conditioned to believe that your internal peace is a hostage to these external events, that you can only feel wealthy when the market is high, and you can only feel secure when the world applauds. This is the life of the vassal, a soul that pays tribute to the outer world in exchange for a fleeting sense of safety. But the law of silent abundance demands that you become the sovereign. To achieve everything by doing nothing, you must establish an inner kingdom whose borders are absolute and whose treasury is independent of all earthly exchange. A sovereign interior is not a place of isolation, but a place of insulation. It is the realization that the world is merely a series of suggestions, while your internal state is the only decree that carries the force of law. When you allow an external crisis to dictate your internal frequency, you have abdicated your throne. You have allowed a commoner to wear your crown. To walk the path of silence is to maintain a hushed center so profound that a revolution could occur in the streets. Yet not a single candle would flicker in your sanctuary. Abundance is not a reaction to the world. It is a broadcast to the world. When your interior is sovereign, you stop asking the world, "What will you give me?" And you begin telling the world, "This is what I am." The world, having no center of its own, eventually bows to the authority of the one who cannot be moved. The parable of the king of the cave. In the age of the great upheaval, there was a king whose empire was being torn asunder by barbarians, droughts, and internal treachery. His advisors screamed for more taxes, more soldiers, and more speeches to rally the frightened masses. They wanted him to be busy, to be visible, and to do something to stop the bleeding. Instead, the king left his marble palace and retreated to a simple, limestone cave in the high cliffs overlooking his capital. He took no crown, no guards, and no ledger. He sat upon a seat of unhewn stone, facing the darkness of the cave's depths rather than the chaos of the valley below. For 40 days, he did nothing. He did not issue a single command. He did not read a single report. He simply sat in the stillness of the scepter. He occupied the frequency of order while the world outside chose chaos. An assassin, sent by his enemies, crept into the cave. The man was a shadow, a master of the blade, fueled by the rage of the starving streets. But as he stepped into the king's presence, the air changed. The king did not move. He did not even open his eyes. Yet, the assassin felt a weight upon his chest that was heavier than iron. The sovereignty of the room was so thick, so absolute, that the assassin's hand began to tremble. He realized that the man before him was not a target, but a gravity. To strike the king would be like trying to stab the mountain itself. The assassin fell to his knees, not out of mercy, but out of an instinctive recognition of a superior power. When the king finally spoke, his voice did not travel through the air. It vibrated in the assassin's very marrow. "Go back to the valley," the king whispered. "Tell them the king is on his throne. Not the throne of gold, which can be stolen, but the throne of the silence, which the world cannot even find." When the assassin returned, he did not kill. He told the people of the king of the cave. The rumors of the king's unshakable peace spread like a cooling wind. The panic ceased. The barbarians, sensing that the spirit of the land had become solid again, turned back at the borders. The king saved his empire not by fighting the chaos, but by refusing to let the chaos enter his interior. The architecture of the unshakable center. You are the king, and your cave is the space between your thoughts. The hustle culture demands that you be informed, which is often just a polite word for being infected by the anxieties of the collective. If you begin your day by consuming the news of the world's lack, you are inviting the barbarians into your throne room before you have even put on your robes. You are surrendering your sovereignty for the price of a headline. Silent abundance requires a psychic border policy. You must decide what is allowed to cross the threshold of your attention. External facts. The market is down. The job is gone. The debt is due. These are merely weather reports. They are happening in the valley. Internal truth. I am the source. My supply is infinite. I am unmoved. This is the law of the kingdom. A sovereign does not deny that it is raining in the valley. A sovereign simply realizes that the rain does not change the gold in the vault. When you maintain your frequency of wealth and peace, despite the evidence of the senses, you are performing the highest act of mirror alchemy. You are forcing the reflection to align with the king, rather than the king shrinking to fit the reflection. The axiom of the interceptor. If the world can give it to you, the world can take it away. Only that which you find in the silence is truly yours. The goal of doing nothing in this context is to cultivate a point of no return, a depth of internal certainty that no external event can reach. When you have found the gold of being, you no longer care about the paper of having, and ironically, it is only when you no longer care about the paper that the paper begins to pile up at your feet, seeking the blessing of your sovereign attention. The silent practice, the coronation of the void. This practice is to be done when you feel the world is closing in, when the noise of the valley is becoming too loud to ignore. The withdrawal. Close your eyes and visualize yourself leaving the palace of your identity. Walk away from your name, your problems, and your body. The ascent. Imagine yourself climbing to the cave of the scepter. It is a place of absolute darkness and absolute safety. The walls are made of non-matter. No sound from the world can penetrate these stones. The enthronement. Sit in the center of this darkness. Feel your spine becoming a pillar of white light. This is your scepter. It does not rule over people. It rules over vibration. The decree. Look out from the cave at the valley of your life. See the tiny, flickering fires of your problems. From your seat of stone, say silently, I see you, but you do not see me. I hear you, but you do not move me. I am the king of the silence, and in my kingdom, all is well. The return. Carry the weight of the cave back into your body. When you open your eyes, do not check to see if the world has changed. Walk through your house with the slow, deliberate grace of a monarch who knows the treasury is full, even if the cupboards are currently empty. When someone brings you bad news, receive it as a sovereign receives a messenger. Listen, nod, and remain in your cave. Do not let your heart rate rise. Do not let your enough frequency flicker. By maintaining your sovereign interior, you become a fixed point in a turning world. And because the universe seeks balance, it will eventually move the entire valley to match the peace of the king. Abundance is not earned. It is commanded by the one who refuses to be a subject of the world. Chapter 13. The Language of Omens. The world communicates in a dialect of neon and noise, a language of blunt force, explicit contracts, and shouting headlines. You have been trained to look for signs of your success in the form of trophies, bank statements, and the loud affirmations of your peers. But the law of silent abundance speaks a much older, subtler tongue. It is the language of omens, a syntax of synchronicity, a vocabulary of shadows, and a grammar of meaningful coincidences that reveal themselves only to the one who has mastered the art of being still. To achieve everything by doing nothing, you must stop reading the news and start reading the signature of the moment. When you enter the frequency of the interior, the universe stops being a random collection of matter and starts being a responsive, living mirror. An omen is not a supernatural intervention. It is a ripple of alignment. It is the physical world acknowledging that your internal frequency has struck a resonant chord with the infinite. If you are rushing, you will miss the messenger. If you are shouting, you will drown out the whisper. But if you are silent, the very stones in the street will begin to tell you which way the gold is buried. The language of omens is the reward of the non-striver. While the hustler is looking at their watch, the sovereign is looking at the way a leaf falls. The hustler sees a delay. The sovereign sees a redirection. The hustler sees a stranger. The sovereign sees a key. The parable of the tracker of shadows. In the edgelands of the great silence, there was a hidden valley where the true maps of the world were kept. Many explorers sought the valley, bringing with them heavy surveying equipment, compasses of polished brass, and dogs trained to scent gold. They marched in straight lines, hacking through the brush, demanding that the land reveal its secrets. They found nothing but dust and thorns. Among them was a woman known as the Tracker of Shadows. She carried no map and no compass. She did not look at the ground, nor did she look at the stars. She walked with her head slightly tilted, as if listening to a conversation occurring just behind the wind. A young explorer, lost and frustrated, came upon her as she sat by a dry creek bed. "The maps are a lie," he groaned. "I have measured every inch of this valley, and there is nothing here but silence." The tracker did not look at him. She was watching the shadow of a hawk as it glided over the gray stones. "You are looking at the things that are," she whispered. "The map is written in the things that aren't." She pointed to a cluster of stones where the shadows didn't quite match the angle of the sun. To the explorer, it looked like a trick of the light. To the tracker, it was an omen. She followed the bent shadow, not the stone. She watched the way the wind didn't move a specific branch of a dead tree. She noticed how a bird stopped singing the moment she thought of turning back. The universe is a shy creature, she said. If you hunt it, it hides. But if you walk as if you are part of its dream, it leaves you footprints of light. A coincidence is just the universe trying to remain anonymous while it hands you a gift. She stepped into what looked like a solid wall of mist, following the trail of a scent that shouldn't have existed in the desert. The explorer tried to follow, but he was looking for a path of dirt. Because he couldn't see the shadow path, he walked in circles until he was back where he started. The tracker, however, reached the Golden Valley because she knew that the most important information is always whispered in the periphery of the senses. The syntax of synchronicity. You are the tracker, and your Golden Valley is the manifestation of your silent abundance. When you live in a doing-nothing state, you develop a soft focus. You stop staring at your goals with the predatory gaze of the ego. When you stare too hard at a thing, you push it away. But when you relax your eyes, you begin to see the omens that are constantly guiding you. An omen can be anything. A book falling off a shelf to reveal a specific sentence. A stranger mentioning a name you were just thinking of. A sudden, unexplained delay that prevents you from an accident or introduces you to a new opportunity. The repetitive appearance of a number, a color, or an animal. The hustle calls these coincidences and dismisses them as unscientific. But in the law of silent abundance, there is no such thing as a coincidence. There is only alignment. When you see an omen, do not analyze it with your logical mind. Logic is a tool for the marketplace. It cannot translate the infinite. Instead, feel the vibration of the omen. Does it feel bright? Does it feel heavy? An omen is a check-in from the source. It is the universe saying, I see you. You are on the frequency. Keep going, but stay quiet. The axiom of the whispered path. Information is for the mind. Guidance is for the soul. The mind needs a map. The soul only needs a rhythm. The language of omens does not tell you how to achieve your goals. It tells you when to move and when to sit still. If you are trying to force a deal and every omen is a red light, a stalled car, a lost email, a sudden headache, the non-resistant soul stops. They do not work through the block. They recognize the block as a sacred communication. They wait for the green omen. The silent practice, the watch of the third hour. This practice is to be performed while moving through your normal day. It is the active silence of the tracker. The intent, before you leave your home, or before you begin your work, state silently, I am open to the language of the all. I do not seek. I recognize. The peripheral gaze. As you walk or work, do not focus entirely on what is in front of you. Keep 10% of your attention on the edges of your vision and the accidental sounds around you. The 3 omen rule. Look for 3 meaningful irregularities in your day. These are things that don't quite fit the rational flow of events. Example, seeing the same rare flower in 3 different places. Example, hearing the same specific word used by 3 different people who do not know each other. The resonance check. When you encounter one of these irregularities, stop for 3 seconds. Do not ask, what does this mean? Ask, how does this feel? If it feels expansive, you are in the flow. If it feels restrictive, you are being asked to pause. The seal of gratitude. When you find your 3rd omen, touch your heart and say nothing. Do not tell anyone what you saw. By keeping the omen secret, you keep its navigational power intact. By practicing the watch, you are telling the universe that you are a fluent speaker of its primary language. You will find that the more you notice the omens, the more frequently they appear. Eventually, your life stops being a struggle for results and becomes a dance with guidance. You are no longer guessing which way to go. You are following a trail of shadows that leads directly to the treasury. Abundance is not a destination you find. It is a conversation you join. Chapter 14. The Final Dissolution. The world is a construct of labels. A marketplace of I ams. From the moment of your first breath, you were clothed in identities. A name, a nationality, a profession, a degree of success or failure. You have been taught that the path to abundance is the process of becoming, of adding more titles to your name and more stories to your history. But the law of silent abundance reaches its zenith in the opposite direction. It is the process of unbecoming. To achieve everything by letting go, you must face the final and most terrifying threshold, the dissolution of the achiever itself. As long as there is a you who is trying to manifest, there is a separation. As long as there is an owner who wants to possess the wealth, there is a boundary that limits the flow. The final dissolution is the melting of the glass wall between the drop and the ocean. It is the realization that you are not a person seeking abundance. You are the very space in which abundance appears. In this state, you stop using the law and start being the law. You no longer need to perform rituals or guard your silence, for there is no longer a separate ego to leak the power. You have moved from the work to the grace. The achiever dies, and the being is born. And to the being, the universe denies nothing, for the being and the universe are of the same substance. The parable of the sculptor of air. In the high, white deserts of the great void, there lived a master sculptor whose work was legendary, yet no man had ever seen a single statue he had made. The kings of the earth sent emissaries with chests of jewels, begging for a piece of his art to grace their gardens. The sculptor turned them all away. "I do not work in stone," he would say. "Stone is too loud. It insists on its own shape. It traps the light. I work only in the air." A young apprentice, driven by a hunger for fame, managed to track the master to a plateau where the wind never ceased. He found the master standing in the center of a vast, empty circle of sand. The master's hands were moving with exquisite grace, carving, smoothing, and polishing the empty space before him. He was sweating with the effort of a man hewing granite, yet his hands touched nothing but the breeze. "Master," the apprentice cried, "you are wasting your life. You spend decades carving the emptiness. When you die, nothing will remain. No one will know you are here. Why not leave a mark upon the world?" The master did not stop his hands. "The mark is the prison," he whispered. The stone statue eventually crumbles, and in its crumbling, it reveals that it was always just a dream of form. I am skipping the dream. I am carving the nothingness until the nothingness itself becomes so perfect that the world has no choice but to fill it. Years passed. The master grew old and frail. On the day of his passing, he made one final, sweeping motion with his hand, a gesture of total release, as if throwing away the very idea of the sculpture. In that moment, the nothingness he had carved for 60 years collapsed. Because he had created a perfect vacuum of non-identity, the physical world rushed in to fill the void. Suddenly, where there had been only wind, a palace of shimmering, translucent diamond appeared. It had not been built. It had been precipitated by the sheer absence of the sculptor's ego. The master disappeared into the walls of his own creation. He did not own the palace. He had become the space that allowed the palace to exist. The suicide of the egoic will. You are the sculptor, and your palace is the life of silent abundance you have been seeking. Up until this chapter, you have used your will to guard your seeds, to tilt your mirrors, and to protect your silence. These were necessary tools for the initiate. They were the scaffolding required to build the temple. But now, the temple is nearing completion, and the scaffolding has become an obstruction. The final dissolution requires you to let go of the wanters. You must stop wanting to be wealthy. You must stop wanting to be successful. Even the wanting to be spiritual must be cast into the fire. Why? Because wanting is a declaration of not having. Even the most sacred desire is still a form of friction. When you dissolve the wanter, you are left with a state of pure availability. You are like a clear radio frequency that is not broadcasting its own music, but is perfectly tuned to receive the symphony of the all. This is the ultimate doing nothing. You are no longer the one pulling the strings. You are the one through whom the infinite plays. This is terrifying to the ego. The ego believes that if it stops driving, the car will crash. It believes that if it stops worrying, the bills won't be paid. The ego is a parasite that lives on the fiction of its own necessity. The final dissolution is the moment you realize the car has been driving itself the entire time, and your worrying was merely the noise of a passenger who thought they were the engine. The axiom of the empty throne. The king is most powerful when he forgets he is wearing the crown. The self is most abundant when it forgets it has a name. When you no longer care if the world sees you as successful, when you are truly, deeply fine with being a nobody in the eyes of the market, you become a sovereign of the void, and the void is the source of all matter. By being nothing, you gain the rights to everything. The silent practice, the right of the nameless. This practice is the most advanced in the manuscript. It is to be performed at the edge of sleep, in that twilight state where the identity begins to blur. The stripping, as you lie in the dark, mentally remove your labels. Say to yourself, I am not your name. Feel that name fall away like a heavy coat. The categorical release. Continue the process. I am not a your profession. I am not a your nationality. I am not a parent, child, spouse. 3. The final peel. Move to the internal identities. I am not a seeker. I am not an achiever. I am not even the one who is doing this exercise. The witnessing of the void. What is left when all the labels are gone? There is a pulse. There is a presence. It has no history, no debt, and no future. It simply is. The merging. Visualize this presence expanding until it fills the room, the city, the earth, and the stars. Realize that this presence is the abundance. It doesn't have wealth. It is the substance from which wealth is made. The surrender, whispered to the darkness, I dissolve. Let the all be the I. In the days that follow, you may feel a strange, cool detachment. You will still go to work, you will still eat, and you will still speak, but you will feel as though you are watching a movie of yourself. This is the dissolved state. Paradoxically, in this state, your luck will become supernatural. Doors will open before you even reach them. Resources will appear before you have identified a need. This is because there is no you in the way to create resistance. You have become the sculptor of air, and the universe is rushing to fill the beautiful emptiness you have created. You have let go of the drop. You are now the ocean. Chapter 15. The Art of Doing Nothing. We have reached a high plateau where the air is thin and the shadows of effort have been burned away by the noon of realization. You have guarded the seed, tilted the mirror, walked the silent path, and finally, dissolved the one who sought the prize. Now, we come to the center of the labyrinth, the art of doing nothing itself. This is not the idleness of the lethargic, nor is it the retreat of the defeated. It is the action of the infinite occurring through the stillness of the individual. To achieve everything by doing nothing is to realize that the universe is a self-organizing masterpiece, and your only true labor is to stop interfering with its perfection. In the world of the hustle, doing nothing is viewed as a sign, a vacuum of productivity that must be filled with the gravel of busy work. But in the law of silent abundance, doing is often a form of statica, desperate attempt by the ego to prove its own existence. When you do from a place of fear, you are essentially telling the universe that its natural flow is insufficient. You are trying to stitch the lily together with a needle and thread, unaware that the lily knows exactly how to bloom on its own. The art of doing nothing is the ultimate mastery. It is the ability to remain in a state of high-frequency interior while the body moves through the world. It is the Wu Wei of the sages, the effortless action where the result is achieved before the hand is even moved. When you are truly doing nothing, you are allowing the Absolute to do everything. The parable of the master of the idle hand. In the city of 1,000 forges, there was a master smith whose blades were so sharp they could cut the wind, and whose shields were so light they felt like woven silk. The other smiths in the city worked 18 hours a day. Their arms were thick with corded muscle, their faces were scarred by sparks, and their workshops rang with the relentless, deafening hammer strikes of effort. They pounded the iron. They cursed the heat. They forced the metal into submission through sheer, brutal willpower. The master, however, sat in a garden of white sand behind his forge. His anvil was cold. His hammer hung on the wall, polished and unused. He spent his days watching the shadows move across the stone or listening to the way the water dripped from a bamboo pipe. A young apprentice from the Guild of the Striving came to challenge him. "You are a fraud," the youth cried. "I have watched your forge for a month, and you have not struck the iron once. Yet, the king says your blades are superior to all. How can a man who does nothing produce the everything of perfection?" The master stood and led the youth to the forge. He took a raw, unformed ingot of iron and placed it upon the cold anvil. He did not pick up the hammer. He simply stood before the metal, his hands resting at his sides, his breath slow and deep. He entered the silent frequency. He did not try to shape the iron. He simply saw the blade that was already living inside the metal. He offered the iron his absolute, undistracted stillness. The youth watched in stunned silence. As the master remained still, the air around the anvil began to vibrate. The iron didn't melt from fire. It softened from the sheer intensity of the master's presence. Slowly, as if moved by an invisible hand, the metal began to ripple and fold. It aligned itself with the master's internal order. Without a single blow being struck, the ingot smoothed into a razor-sharp curve of perfect geometry. "The others fight the metal," the master whispered. "They treat it as an enemy. I treat it as a mirror. I do not do the work. I simply provide the space where the work can do itself. My idle hand is more powerful than their 1,000 hammers because I am not fighting the nature of things. I am allowing the law to be the smith. The frequency of effortless result. You are the master smith, and the iron is the raw potential of your life. The secret of the art of doing nothing is the shift of agency. You must move from the belief that I am the one who makes things happen to the realization that I am the one through whom things happen. When you move from this center, your actions change their quality. You no longer chase clients. You encounter them. You no longer struggle with a creative block. You wait for the harvest. You still move. You still speak. And you still participate in the world, but you do so with the internal idleness of the sage. You are like a professional dancer who has practiced the steps so perfectly that the body now dances itself. This is the peak of silent abundance. When you stop doing wealth, you become wealthy. When you stop doing success, you become successful. The verb dissolves into the noun. The world will see you as lucky. They will see you as someone for whom things just work out. They will marvel at how you can spend your morning in meditation and your afternoon in the garden, while your empire grows of its own accord. They will think you have a secret hustle you aren't showing them. They cannot comprehend that your secret is the total absence of hustle. You have removed the friction of the self, and in that frictionless state, the universe accelerates toward you. The axiom of the unstruck blow. The mountain does not seek the clouds, yet the clouds crown its head. The flower does not seek the bee, yet the bee brings the gold. Be the destination, not the traveler. Most people are travelers. They are always on the way to their abundance. But if you are always on the way, you are by definition not there. The art of doing. Nothing is a decision to arrive now. You sit still and realize that the destination has already moved to your current coordinates. You stop traveling and start being the mountain. The silent practice. The right of the idle hand. This practice is to be integrated into your daily tasks. It is the training of active non-action, the choice of task. Choose a simple task you usually perform with a sense of urgency or effort, typing an email, washing a dish, or driving to a destination. The softening of the will. Before you begin, pause. Feel the push in your mind, that mental forward lean, that wants the task to be finished. Consciously drop that lean. The observation of the instrument. As you begin the task, watch your hands as if they belonged to a stranger. Do not direct them. Trust the body intelligence to do the work. The internal garden. While your body is doing, your mind is doing nothing. Visualize your mind as the master's sand garden, silent, raked into perfect lines, and completely still. The recognition of grace. Notice how the task feels when you are not fighting it. Is the email written more clearly? Is the dish cleaner? Do you arrive at your destination with more energy? Repeat this throughout the day. Every time you catch yourself straining, whisper the word, idleness. This is the ultimate seal of the law. By doing nothing, you allow the infinite to use your hands. And the infinite never fails, never tires, and never lacks. You have reached the end of the path of effort and stepped onto the sea of grace. The blades are being forged. The garden is in bloom. And you are simply sitting in the sun, watching the miracle unfold. The closing ceremony, the seal of silence. The manuscript is complete. The words have been spoken, and the frequencies have been set. You stand now at the final gate, the threshold where the teaching leaves the page and becomes the very marrow of your existence. This is not a conclusion, for the law of silent abundance has no end. It is a sealing, a ritual of energetic containment designed to ensure that the gold you have mined in these chapters does not leak back into the pockets of the world. You are now a keeper of the great secret. The secret is not a formula or a set of instructions. The secret is the quality of your stillness. From this moment forward, you walk among men, but you are not of their striving. You participate in the marketplace, but your treasury is elsewhere. You are a ghost in the machine of the hustle, a silent sovereign whose power is felt but never explained. To seal this journey, you must make a final covenant with the infinite. You must vow to protect your internal garden from the trampling feet of the curious and the skeptical. You must commit to the holy mischief of being the most abundant soul in the room while appearing to do the least. The parable of the sunken treasure in the deepest reach of the sapphire sea. Far below the reach of the sun's fingers and the anchor's bite, there lies a chest of unimaginable wealth. It is filled with the light of the first star, a substance that can turn lead into spirit and debt into destiny. For centuries, treasure hunters have swum the surface, dragging nets and diving into the shallows, shouting to the heavens that they will find the gold and use it to buy the world. They talk of the treasure in the taverns. They draw maps of it in the sand. They argue over who shall own its glitter. And because they speak of it, the sea keeps it hidden. The noise of their greed creates a silt that clouds the water, making the deep invisible. The treasure stays at the bottom, not because it is lost, but because it is held, because it is never brought to the surface to be weighed by a merchant or appraised by a king. Its value remains infinite. It does not rust, for the salt cannot touch the first light. It does not diminish, for no one can spend it. It sits in the absolute silence of the abyss, and from that silence, it regulates the tides of the entire world. The ocean is powerful not because of the waves that crash upon the shore, but because of the weight of the secret at its floor. The waves are the hustle loud, white-capped, and quickly dissipated. The treasure is the abundance, dark, silent, and eternal. You are that ocean, and your silence is the depth that protects the light. The final covenant of the sovereign. The world will try to draw you out. It will ask you for your method. It will demand to know how you stay so calm while the towers fall. It will tempt you to brag, to teach those who are not ready, and to justify your peace. Resist the urge to explain. Every time you explain your power, you lose a portion of it. Every time you show your sunken treasure to a passerby, you move it from the infinite into the finite. Your abundance is a private transaction between your heart and the Creator. To keep it, you must hide it. Walk with a hidden smile. When you receive a windfall, thank the silence in the dark. When you achieve a miracle, let the world believe it was luck. Enjoy the private irony of being the architect of a reality that the world thinks is an accident. This is the ultimate doing nothing, letting the world have its opinions while you have the gold. The axiom of the eternal seal. The well that is never mentioned never runs dry. The soul that is never measured never meets a limit. The ceremony, the locking of the vault. This is your final act as an initiate and your first act as a master. The physical anchor. Place your right hand over your heart and your left hand over your navel. Feel the connection between your higher center and your creative center. The gathering. Imagine all the words you have read in this manuscript tall, the parables, the laws, and the practices, turning into a single, brilliant point of white light in the center of your chest. The descent. Visualize that light descending deep into your core, settling into the abyss of your interior, just like the sunken treasure. The seal. Imagine a great silver door closing over the light. There is no keyhole on the outside. Only you can open it from within, through the frequency of silence. The vow. Whispered these words into the quiet of the room. I have received the light. I have entered the silence. I am the source of my own supply. I do nothing, and all is done. It is sealed. It is secret. It is mine. Now, take one deep, final breath of the infinite. Do not look for a sign that this has worked. Do not check your bank account or your messages. Simply stand up and walk into your life as if you have just inherited the stars. Because you have. Go now. Say nothing. The silence is your witness, and the abundance is your shadow.